So I'm in northern Florida, and if you're experienced to the area, you know that's full of trees and woodland. It also gets super dark where I'm staying, as there aren't any city lights. Not saying this has anything to do with my story, just providing possible context. I've been in this area for 3 to 4 months with nothing supernatural happening to me. One night, in my apartment, I'm sleeping, my room is near pitch black, and I suddenly wake up. I'm sitting up for some reason, and across my bed at my feet is this sort of shadow man. This man is such a dark black that he isn't transparent like a ghost or anything. He is also so dark that it is almost brightening up the rest of my room, if that makes any sense. I want to be scared and turn away, or jump and turn on my lights, but my dad has always taught me not to be afraid of anything paranormal because, if it is evil, you being fearful will never turn out good. So I just stare back at it, not moving and staying calm. Now my feet are maybe half a foot away from this thing at the most, so if it wanted to do anything, it could have. I'd say realistically the shadow man was 6 feet generally large, but it did not have any facial features, none at all. It also didn't have any clothes or body parts from what I can remember, just the outline of a person. We stare at each other for about 10 seconds, and then suddenly it turns, diagonally, and goes across me to the right and disappears about 3 feet later. It doesn't have any feet and the legs are gone at the mid-shins. It totally just floated across my floor. What the craziest thing was to me was that this turn was so unconventional. Its legs rotated first and then upper body, and then it floated across. When it moved, he never looked at me again. It was stuck to really specific movements. So when his head wasn't facing me, he couldn't turn and look at me when he turned diagonal to me. The best way I can explain his movements is like a train stuck on a train track. He couldn't move freely and seemed to be confined. The rotation, too, of his body before he left was confined and unnatural. I'm sorry if this explanation is poor, but I'm doing my best. After floating across for 3 feet, he just disappeared. And it's been about 4 months since this happened, and nothing else has happened since. What might be interesting to you all is that before I had this, I had a heart problem, and it was getting worse every week. My heart would flutter, and I would get more and more shortness of breath, and my heart would clench up like I was almost having a heart attack. Note that I am in good athletic shape, and I take vitamins every day and have an above-average diet. My legs started falling asleep, too. I would get dizzy when I leaned over, and I could no longer run for even close to the distance that I used to be able to. All signs of somewhat early heart failure. However, after this Shadow Man encounter, all of my symptoms got better and literally disappeared. Take this how you want. I'm not saying this Shadow Man helped me or not. I'm just leaving it open as an option, that maybe this shadow creature helped me somehow. I'm all ears to whatever you guys think the Shadow Man was, and will do my best to answer any questions. Also, I'm not religious, nor am I non-religious or anything, and I don't believe in or practice anything crazy, just open to everything, kind of. I looked online for a while and tried to find similar stories of people encountering or seeing what I saw, but nothing was really similar. When I was 13, I was on an ATV with my 2 older sisters, one 15 and the other 18. We were going to my grandma's, which was less than 2 kilometers away from my parents' place. We were traveling through our fields, but on the way I suggested we go around the fences so we didn't have to open the gates. It was pretty much the same path, just a bit off to the side. We had gates because this was our pasture for the cows. As we get to the middle of the field, we all notice something sitting on top of the hill we were about to climb. On top of this hill, We had a somewhat big pile of rocks from working the fields a long time ago. We slowed to a crawl because it looked human. We thought maybe a calf fell and was stuck, or maybe it was my uncle who looked after the cattle. But this thing was sitting weird. Basically like how Spider-Man perches over buildings, crouched down on top of a rock. As we were sitting there trying to figure out what we were seeing, this thing slowly stood up and my heart sank. Its arms were long, grossly long. I screamed to stop and instantly jumped from the front of the ATV to the driver's seat, replacing my sister. As we were switching, this thing started running toward us, but it was running weird. Its arms were swaying back and forth like a normal runner, but because of how long the arms were, it just looked weird. You would think it would run on the long arms, but it didn't. It was running fast. I turned around and shot off straight through the field. My sisters were screaming and it was still coming at us, but I honestly could not look back at this thing. I just told her not to look at it. We rounded the corner, and that was the last we saw of it. After that corner, it's the trail to my parents' house. As we got home, I crashed the ATV into the deck, trying to get in as fast as we could. We were so scared, my parents actually believed us. They called all the family to warn if it was a trespasser. They said nobody saw anything or anyone in the field. Now, I want to describe this thing. It was tall, skinny, and it wore no clothes. It just had a body, is what you could see. Grayish color, and the head wasn't shaped like a human. It was thin and small. We were about 30 to 40 meters away from this thing, and it was during the day, too. This all happened in Alberta. I could describe it a lot better if anybody has any questions. These are my encounters with the creatures known as dogmen while living in Kentucky. They still haunt me to this day, and I thought I would share them all with you. Story 1. I was 8 years old, living in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. It was the summer of 2012, and it was a hot one. One summer night, I woke at 11:30 to midnight, and I was sweating like hell. So I walked over to the window to crack it, and that's when I saw something in the tree line by our stock pond. We owned no animals other than a small terrier, but the previous owners were commercial farmers. I watched for about 5 minutes before it emerged, and when it did, I was horrified. It was a wolf-like creature, about 6 to 7 feet tall, and partially covered in dark gray hair that shone in the light of the full moon. It walked out on 2 legs, and then very quickly dropped on all 4s and ran the 100 or so yards to the stock pond in mere seconds. It drank for a while, and then stood up on 2 legs again, and I got a really good look at it. The thing was horrible looking. The fur was all patchy, it was very skinny, and it looked like it was covered in some kind of injuries. Years later, when I saw the 3rd Harry Potter movie for the first time, I saw the werewolf, and that's almost exactly what it looked like. It then took off across the old cornfield and into the woods on the other side. I had heard stories of the creature, but never really believed them until that night. I heard a week later, while out around town with my folks, that there had been an attack on a nearby farm, and 3 hogs and 1 horse had been eaten and ripped to shreds. This was my first, but not last, encounter with the dogman. Story 2. I caught glimpses of the things consistently ever since that first sighting, but never got another good look at one of them until fall of 2015, a month before we moved to Maine. It was dusk, and I was going outside with some of my friends playing with our Nerf guns, as young boys do. Those were the good days. Anyways, after a while, we got bored and we started a fire. We told dirty jokes and laughed for a while, but then we started hearing noises in the woods, and the laughter died down. We all retreated to the woodshed and armed ourselves with axes, pitchforks, and the like before returning to the fire. About 10 minutes later, something rustled in the woods about 20 yards behind us, but no one dared to look to see what the hell it was. Finally, my friend Jeremy turned around to look, and the scream he let out could have brought down the barn roof. That's when we all turned around and saw one of them, except this one was much taller. I'd say 8.5 to 9 feet, and it was pure muscle and gray hair. It was on all fours, sniffing around the barn, but when Jeremy screamed, the thing looked at us, stood up on 2 legs, and snarled. That's when my dad came out of the house with his shotgun and screamed, "What in God's name is going on?" We all just pointed and screamed, and then he looked at it, yelled, "Go on, get!" and shot at it twice. It ran into the woods yelping, as I think it had been hit, and we all went inside and locked the doors. My dad sat in his chair with the shotgun the whole night, and I swore I could hear scratching along the side of our house until daylight. Turns out, when we went outside the next morning, there were claw marks all over the side of the house. After that, everything was quiet until we moved, and I've never seen anything like that since. My first paranormal experience was when I was about 7 or 8. My brother and I decided to walk to our friend's house, which was about 100 yards down the back alley. I will give a little history of the town area I grew up in. It's a small country town called Pine Grove in Pennsylvania. It's the typical small town where everyone knows everyone. We would play outside every day, especially in the summer, and our best friends lived right down the street. There is a main street that goes through the entire town, which we lived off of, but there was an alley that went right past the back of our house. My and my brother's friend lived down the alley, about a football field away. But back to the story. My brother and I started getting closer to our friend's house, and we see this man by the stop sign at the end of the alley. The stop sign is past our friend's house, about 150 yards away. He looks like what I would picture God looking like. White man with silky white pants and shirt. As we get closer, my heart starts pounding faster and I realize that he's floating and not walking. My brother saw it too and said, "Hey, he's floating." And we started running. The man thing looked right at us at this point, and he was about 100 yards away from us. He literally had no face, just blank, blurred skin, no eyes, nose, no nothing. We had reached our friend's house, and they were asking why we looked so scared. We told them what happened, and the boys rode their bikes around the neighborhood, but saw nothing that fit our description. I, still to this day, have no idea what the heck it was, but it still makes my heart race as I am typing this. Any ideas on what it could be? I wrote to a paranormal podcast host and he said it could have been an alien. I've seen a few UFOs in that town, so it could possibly be true. I'm also wondering if anyone else has seen anything close to this. I only have 3 short encounters with them. Possibly them, I don't know. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, so it's one of the biggest cryptids here. My first experience with one of them was when I was 12. I was in the living room laying on the floor as a child often does, and to put into perspective, the living room on one wall was just the sliding door to go outside. It was in that noon area where everything is a bit dark but the sky is still blue, and when I looked at those sliding doors from the left to the right, was a tall, lanky figure. It was dark and I don't remember seeing its face, but it was just walking there hunched and looking down, walking from one side to the other, and I remember just getting this, aura of fear and anxiety. I just laid there looking out, not knowing what to do. Since that experience, I've actually had severe anxiety attacks. My second encounter was when I was 15, and I had moved to another house. I never felt right in this house. It's too big and it's so easy to get dark in here. But I felt a little good with my cat and dog. This one night, my dog was getting severely freaked out by something in the backyard. I thought it was just a dude being a dick since there was an alleyway between my house and my backdoor neighbor. So I went up to look and see what was freaking out the dog so much. And there, like standing 3 feet higher than the fence, was, again, this dark, lanky figure. That same aura got to me, and I just remember running to my room and closing the door, not coming out until morning. That's the encounter that really made me scared of the dark, and I still live here in that house. The third and final encounter was when I went to Sedona for vacationing 1 year later. I remember hearing that Sedona was a major hotspot for aliens and paranormal, and now I can see why. We stayed there for 3 days, and for the first 2 days, I'll tell y'all, I was happy by just seeing strange lights in the sky and UFOs. It was pretty sweet. Then we decided to go hiking on one of them tours, and the aura fell on me with a couple of others. I never saw if it was them that caused it, or if it was what being scared of hiking was. I brushed it off me as being scared, but when I left up on the edge of the cliff, I don't know if that's what you call it, but there was like a hole there where people would swim and just chillax, and it was surrounded by a hill of rock, and just above I saw a lanky, dark figure, but I'm sure that was part of my imagination. On the way home, though, I do remember seeing lights in the sky, and I remember that we got close to hitting something, and I don't know if it was because we were going fast, and it's a blur, but it looked like that lanky, dark figure again. Now this Sedona one is iffy because I don't know if it's what I saw exactly or just my imagination, but at least the lights were cool. Hey guys, how you doing? Did you enjoy that collection of cryptid encounters? I hope you did, because honestly, they were actually pretty creepy. If you did enjoy that collection of cryptid encounters, please let me know in the comments which story was your favorite, because that would mean a lot to me. Also, if you really liked this video and would like more content like this, or content that is so vastly different, it's like comparing Bob Ross to ice cream cones, consider joining the Nevermore. To join the Nevermore, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button and the bell icon next to it. That makes you part of the Nevermore. You can also do things to support the growth of the Nevermore, such as following me on Twitter, liking my Facebook, joining my subreddit, or supporting me on Ko-fi or Patreon. All of these things are completely optional, but are very, very much appreciated. I just also want to say thank you to everyone who watches these videos and is subscribed. And if you're not subscribed, please tell me what would make you subscribe in the comments. What would you like to see more of on this channel? Alright guys, that's all I have to say. Thank you for coming, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day. But until next time, sleep well.